Okay, looks like I'm good. Just gonna make sure it's... I'll let you guys tell me if it's working. Alright, so this is the first Yawnoc stream. 7:40. What are you in California or something? Yeah, so the main thing I want to work on today is the weird shadow thing I had going on before. So you can see there are like shadow tiles on the edges of like the whoa, that's not correct. There are shadow tiles on the edges of the terrain that are supposed to look like shadows, but it's actually just a different tile. I want to implement actual shadows. So, but I'll do a quick playthrough right now so people can see what the game looks like if they're like watching from the beginning. Alright, so I did notice, oh wait, no, I guess there aren't any issues on this one. But yeah, you can see like right here, so this darker area, I want that to be a proper shadow instead of using tiles, and it'll be overlaid over whatever tiles are there, and then that will make it so that it just looks, well, it looks nice. It'll look nicer and hopefully smoother, but it'll also make it so I don't have to have as many tile variations. Because right now I had to, well, I was lazy and I just did 2 for the shadows, I think. Maybe, or maybe I didn't. But there's not very many shadow things, so. I don't have enough money. Actually, well, I can do this. Secondary cooldown. Although the secondary on the rifle's not super strong. Alright. And then on the rifle, you actually really want scoped weapons because then it increases the range of your secondary, which makes it stronger effectively. Alright. I think I'll just do like until I die pretty much. I have not played in a bit, so I will probably not last too long. The real question is, can I make it far enough to unlock the shotgun, which is it? I think it's level 8 I have to beat. Or wave 8. Alright, I think I'm gonna come up on the eggs here soon. I'll take those 2. Okay, that's not great. Fortunately, have a fair bit of range. Ow. I can't, there's too many things in the way. I can't get to the stupid beacon. Can I like go get, okay, maybe the chest down here might give me what I need. Nope, it's just money. That was a bad idea. And there's more. I might actually die here. Oh wait, no, that helps a lot. Okay. I might need to buy a potion after this wave. Okay, now that the beacon's gone, the high life things will stop, and I can, ow, That's not cool. Fortunately, it's all one type. Okay, that didn't work. All right. Yeah, I'm a little bit rusty, but also I got a little bit unlucky too. The pistol's a lot better for that situation. You just lob a grenade and you can wipe out a ton of the stuff. The rifle scales better in the long term, I think, because it's got a better fire rate and like more damage per second as a base. And then once you get enough upgrades, your secondary becomes decently strong to the point where it's comparable to the pistol. All right, so let us. Well, I'll read chat and then I'll start working on the shadows. The prize of your product is back. Well, I got the money. I don't know. I did get the actual prize too. So, but with the way the wish lists are looking right now, it looks like I should make somewhere around 10 times as much from actual game sales as I did from the competition. So we'll see. Why does the beacon not move? What's it doing? It's like kind of the boss enemy. It's supposed to be stationary, but later I'm gonna add that puts out like a spiral of projectiles or something, so that it's more obvious that it's an enemy. Because right now it just sits there and has a special health bar. Yeah, so like I plan on changing that, but it will just stay stationary always. It's supposed to be at the center of the map and just kind of affecting things. Yeah, it causes the high life event. All right. So we need shadows because, well, yeah, I'm gonna pull up the sketch thing. So stuff. We'll pull up Yawnoc, data, images. And I'm going to be, I did take a pretty long break because I finished the competition in February, and now it's June. And I was busy with some other stuff, but now my primary focus is probably going to be Yawnoc for the next few months until I finish the game. You can see the thing from that's the bot avatar on my Discord server right now. This is just drawn with this palette, so I threw it in here. That was for one of my thumbnails. Alright, so the way this is going to work is I'm going to have to take like maybe this or something. Well, how big is this tile? My tiles are 12 by 12. So I'm going to grab white and I will do, it's going to be 14 by 14. And then copy this, make a whole row, and then copy it that way. And now we do shadows. All right. So the way I'm thinking about doing shadows, actually, it's gonna be tricky. How should I do them? Because I want them to be able to, I'm not sure if there's actually the right number of tiles I need. So I'm probably going to compose them, and it's going to turn into one image for the map, and then it's just pre-rendered and done. So I think I might break it down into quarters. Because, like, for example, we can do, is that halfway? I don't even know if I did that right. That's gotta be halfway. I don't know. We'll see. That's 6 and 6. Okay. So this is the puzzle of doing tile stuff. Actually, I'm thinking maybe I want it to be a little more like that. I could even do that. I like that more. And then I can just rotate it 4 times, and that gives us our first 4. So rotate 90 degrees, rotate 90 degrees, and you know what? I'm gonna copy, I'll copy that. And we'll just drop that right here and right here. And we can copy this, rotate 90 degrees. So I'm gonna patch together multiple of these. So each corner will be calculated pretty much. So now I need the flat edges. So the flat edges are gonna be three across. Actually, I'll start here. Oh wait. Wait, how do I want to? Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's how it should look. And then we rotate these. These will be applied with an alpha. Oh, wait a second. Oof. So I actually need a lot of these. So I'll need like a second thing for, well, I'll need to go into the third row for this. And then we'll copy this one and rotate. We can do left this time. And now we need the top side. So this is just that you can make the straight connections. Rotate 90. Rotate 90. And rotate 90. All right. So now you can make a lot of different patterns here. So the next thing is what happens if it needs to stop. So like you can reasonably, you could have like a curve and then it goes down for a bit, but then you want it to cut off. So your shadow could be something like this. So we have the corner here and we have the straight part, but we need the end part. So just thinking of, actually, do I have that information? I'm trying to think if I have the information I need to do this. Let's see. So well, let's map out, I guess, what the tile pattern would be for each of these. So if the tile pattern is, we'll put the red is the tile we're filling in. So we do the corner like that if we see those two whites in like the upper corner. And then this one would be just if we have this. Is that? Oh wait, I have an idea. So how about, yeah. So I could like draw these out like that, and then when they get mixed with, like, say, where's the opposite one? This one is the opposite side. It would just cover it and it would look flat. But so the assumption is that the tile eases off. I can do that. So I go down like that, maybe. And I can do that for all of them. Is that a good idea? Let's see. Because, so if you've got something on the left side, you know for a fact there's, well, if you're placing these tiles, you know for a fact there's something on the left side. So it's safe to at least place all that stuff on. I think that works actually. So now I just gotta add all of this stuff. I wish you could zoom in more. This is why I'm tempted to make my own version of MS Paint. And I was working on something like that. But other stuff got in the way. I might do that like next year, because that's a very useful thing to have. Oh wait, so for these top ones, I actually need it going both directions. I'm doing like 3 with 2 width and 3 with 1 width. Yeah. So once I finish these shadows, I can start doing the code for placing them, which will be interesting. I'll just place them all in one image, and then you'll, I guess, cut it out and place it in the map. There's a couple ways to do it. The fastest way would be to have actually a tile system for the shadows, because then you're not rendering a full screen worth of images, and actually might do that, so we'll have to see. Depends how annoying it is to do with my framework. Alright. I cannot, I don't know, man, my eyes, I can't see. Oh, I had 1 extra pixel there. I could not see if it was black or the dark color for a moment there. Alright, so that should be what I need. And the way it'll work is, like, for example, if you've got yourself a corner, and then you can have like a straight section, but then you also got to do, actually no, we this one. So you have this one. Oh, I need the that. You get this one, and then you get this one. This is how it will piece together. So that's how, like, that wall would be built. So it would be the three things. If there's like 1 thing above, 2 things down on the left. So that's how that ends up working. Now this just needs to be turned into a tile set that I can actually use. So I can just throw it into spreadsheets, I think. So yeah, that means I just replace the white with cyan, and I think that's actually a tile set. All right. File, save as. That is for my video that will be out later today. Hopefully. Where did I put my stuff? Yawnoc. Data, images, spreadsheets. So this is where we're putting it. We're going to call this shadows. And then now we just have to make this cyan. And now we have shadows. Do I need? Yes, I do need to have a configuration. Yeah, I think I can leave it empty though, because I'm just going to steal the images out of it. It's not going to be using the tile set. So these configurations can have things for like how the physics are going to work, I think. Do they? Well, let's go and fix. I did see there was an issue with one of the maps. So the fortress one, I think, had an issue. But I don't need the decor, I need this part. I saw, yep. So I was missing this yellow right here. So if you look on these maps here, the dark portion, this dark red color, is the shadows. The the pink stuff is, or the magenta is basically solid looking tiles that you can stand inside, and that's because of the way I handle physics. So, and because it's top down, so you want to be able to stand behind a wall, essentially. Yeah. Anyways, I'm going to have to, I think, change up this system at some point, but that is not for today. Is this one looking good? Yeah, that one looks fine. So I lose just that one. All right. So let's see if it loads the spreadsheet. That seems to work. All right. So now let's try and figure out how we're going to do the shadows. I'm thinking about doing with just one image for now, because it wouldn't be that expensive. How's my performance? Print self.e window.fps. I don't remember if it's like a property or if it's a function. Oh, yeah. So I'm getting like 160. That's acceptable. Now I'm worried because, well, okay, so 160 means that if I run this on, well, first of all, I'm getting this scaling going on. Yeah. So if I get rid of this, so it's black, that actually does not save me a whole lot. Interesting. I'm curious where the slowdown comes from. Anyways, yeah, 160 is good enough. That's my monitor's refresh rate is 144 hertz, I think. But in lots of laptops, I just need to aim for 60 FPS. And because of the way things scale, I can assume that most laptops are going to be able to get a bit over, I think, half of my performance, depending on how I write some stuff. So you just kind of divide it by 2, and that's what I should be looking at. So theoretically, I should be staying above 120 FPS is what I should be aiming for. And then it'll run on almost anything. So it's very different from most games because the most of the processing, well, most of the intense stuff is on the CPU, and expensive CPUs are not going to be that much better at single core performance than cheap laptops, unless the cheap laptops are using all of their CPU just trying to run Windows. And in that case, then they can't really run the game at all, regardless. Printing every frame, yeah. Well, that will mess you up if you're running out of idle, because it's TK and it takes a while to update the thing. But in this, I don't think it affects it too much, as long as you're not like in the thousands. Why not Asprite? Have it. Asprite, there's more overhead in like saving files and stuff like that. I never use the Pygame Sprite stuff. What mic do I use? Is like a Zoom H2. It's a field recorder. I'm not supposed to use it for what I'm using it for, so I would not recommend the microphone I have for the types of things I'm doing with it. Well, it is good for when I need to record sound effects and stuff like that, especially for ambience. It's really good at recording ambience, so if I want to go out into a forest somewhere and record some sounds, it's good for that. I also do need to re-record the Yawnoc ambience because I can hear cars. I need to go out somewhere and take my microphone with me so I can record some actual proper ambience where there's not like a bass noise level from cars on a highway somewhere within 10 miles. What else will I add to the game? I have a lot of stuff planned. I'm not going to go through the whole list right now, but the main thing I have coming up, though, I think is adding, like, instead of the shop being in the area you fight in, I want there to be a more kind of open area And I want there to be like, I don't know, like a little settlement and stuff, and there will be the armadillo guy where you can get certain types of upgrades and stuff. So I want to work on world building a bit, and like basically separate out kind of the combat gameplay from the shopping stuff, and just make it the world feel a bit more interesting. So that's one of the next things I'm going to work on. And then, well, obviously right now I'm working on shadows, and that's probably all I'm going to do today. Once I'm done with the shadows, I'll probably be done for the day. Yes, I am making a Steam game with Python. There's a link in the description if you want to wishlist it. Yes, I do have 2 other Pygame games on Steam, but it was 2018 and 2019. That's 5 and 6 years ago. So standards, the quality of the games is not going to be the same. What's my opinion on arcade versus Pygame? Haven't used arcade. And so arcade's benefit is that it's using OpenGL. I think for learning, it's worse. Well, it depends. You'll learn more important concepts by using Pygame, I feel like, because I think arcade abstracts out some things that I think are important concepts to learn. But arcade, in theory, is easier to get into. And, well, in my case, I don't see a reason to use arcade over Pygame and modern GL, because between Pygame and modern GL, when I mix them together, I can get better performance than arcade, and I can do more stuff. So I think arcade's main appeal is if you want to just do something very like get in and make something when you don't know much about game development, so it can make some of that stuff easier. And I think at a surface level, it also may on some things seem like it has better performance than Pygame, especially when you're dealing with, I think, big images, because it uses OpenGL under the hood. So there are some advantages there, but it's mostly I feel like surface level stuff, where if you're like just getting started, it might be better. Which is funny because, well, I guess no, Pygame and arcade both have names that sound like they're not like they have names that sound like they're meant for beginners. Which, I mean, Pygame is good for education, but it is also literally just the implementation of SDL in Python, which is used for all sorts of stuff. How long did it take to make the game programming and art separately? Well, you can look at my video for the Yawnoc devlog. I mean, it was probably less than 50 hours in total I've put into Yawnoc so far. Most of it was spent on code. I did not spend a whole lot of time on art. There's not a whole lot of art in this game at the moment. So the art was probably less than 10 hours. Yeah, if you wanted to use the GPU, there are better tools than arcade. Can I print hello world? No, I don't feel like it. All right, so let's go ahead and try and build this shadow thing. So it'll have to like trigger off of when the map is loaded. So I have my auto tile in here, and I could actually call it in the auto tile. I think the better solution, though, am I auto tiling? How do I do this? Def auto tile. Where do I call it? Self.auto tile. So it calls it on load map. Is this inside? Oh no, it's a script, so this is its own thing. I could make this, let's see. Yeah, you know what? I'll just add a shadows thing. This is such a scuffed way to handle the different layers, but it'll work, I guess. So shadows will be a dictionary. We'll pull out of that and render that. I think this might be part of the performance issues, maybe, because I have to look into all of these instead of them. I have to do a ton of lookups instead of all the data being right there once I do one. What else? So it would be right here on load map where I would do it, and I'd probably do it. Would I do it after the auto tile? I guess I just look up the from the walls or from solids. From walls or solids? Which ones do I do? Well, let's take a look and see. So if we start the game as a little case study, there's too many trees on this stuff. I can't see it all. Do I want, let's see this one. Okay, here's what I can see. All right, yeah, so that's what it should be. It should be based on the solids. Wait, there should be something here. I'm pretty sure. So there's two tiles right here. I am missing a shadow. I think it's just because it's on the corner. So if I go over to this one, yeah. But I only need it to be based on the solids. So this wall I can stand behind should not have a shadow next to it. It should be placed like this, which means that I do it based on the solids and not, which includes this front wall here, and not based on the top layer stuff. So that will mean, believe it or not, the walls thing is a bit misleading. So I do need to use the solids for the lookups here. So self.generate shadows. And then now I can write a function for that. So def generate shadows self. And for this, how do I want to do this? I could make this stuff as a tile. I'm trying to think how much of a downside there is. Well, there's all this fancy logic in the tile render. Oh boy. Yeah. I mean, so you index in, I think it's faster if I just do a different thing, because it just calls .render in the end. So I'll make like a shadow tile, so this will run faster. Def init self parent tile type, or no, I'll give it the image directly, because I want it to have a reference to the image, and it'll just have it right there to render. And it does need the position. So self.position equals position, self.image equals image, and def, and note that it's not copying it, it's just a reference to it. Render offset, or self offset, and then we can just calculate this stuff. That's the render position, and if it's high life, or rather if it's not high life is when we render it. If we do high life, it's nothing, so there's no shadows in high life, and we just call this function. How do I handle z? Z equals if self.wall. So I want it to be above. In theory, z needs to be this number plus 1, so we go that. I think that works. Self.image, and so this is our shadow tile. We can create one of these. Self.parent equals parent. We can create one of our shadow tiles. whenever we need to place a shadow. So now we have to figure out how we can describe our different tile patterns, because we've got to merge together the 4 images that I drew earlier to create one tile image. But then I don't want to have those saved for every single tile so that it uses a ton of RAM. It needs to all point to the same thing. So I need to have caching on that so they can use the same stuff. But to do that, I need to be able to have identify when something would be the same. And that will be based on the bordering tiles. So first, I think I should just write the code to generate the image for the tile, and then afterwards I can worry about how I'm going to cache it, because it'll be derived from that. Anyways, so the first step is we go through every tile. So question number 1. Oh, map SRC. Oh, I need that. Map SRC, so I need that. Question number 1 is, if a tile is at the edge of the map, should its neighbor be considered a shadow or not? Or should its neighbor be considered a solid or not? I think I'm gonna go with yes. So I have this tile n4 plus, or I can just do the tile n4. So I can check which neighbors this thing has. So literally just do this for offset, and then if decor map SRC. Oh, so these are this is the source image. So I actually don't need that now that I think about that. I only need the actual loaded stuff. So I can actually just index. I should be indexing into. Oh, but I do need the size, so that's why it doesn't need to be there. But I'll be indexing into or keying into the solids. So for offset, we don't need that 0 thing. That doesn't matter. It doesn't care about the tiles on. Actually, no, it does. So the first rule is there is no shadow if you're in a solid. So if xy in self.solids continue. So we ignore it if we are looking at what is already a solid. We don't need a shadow there. And actually, while we're at it, we should do that, or wait, or xy in self.walls, I think it is. So we also don't want it to show for behind a wall either. Even though it might not be solid, you still wouldn't see it. So we don't need that there. Anyway, so for our offset we've got here, we can do location equals x plus offset, y plus offset. And actually, I think the default here, which I guess I won't bother with, is that if you're indexing outside the range of the map, you'll get no tile seen, which I guess is fine as long as all the borders are covered. Someone's honking their horn a whole lot. If location in self.solids, then so we need to make a list of all the neighbors. Or how should I do this? Here, let's do neighbors equals that. Neighbors append true, else neighbors append false. So this will be dependent on the order of tile n4. So this is some same thing. So it's right, left, down, up. So right, left, down, up. It's an interesting order. Now we need to select our tiles based on what is there. How how should this work? Okay, so we'll do the corner case first. So let me pull up my reference here. I'm going to pull it up on the side. You guys aren't going to be able to see it because I need to have VS Code open at the same time. So here are the shadows. I'm going to reference these when selecting the images. Well, actually, first I should write the code to even get the image. So how do I get that? So it comes from... I can grab some of this stuff. Tiles, is that? No. No, wait, is that correct? So the type, this is the one. So that's what I need. So I'm just gonna paste this here and comment it out, pretty much. And instead of self.type, we'll do some other stuff. Oh, or wait, no, this one's going to just be shadows. And then the variant is the thing I have to figure out. And then we have to merge all those together into one image and like cache it and render it and all sorts of stuff. All right. So the first case is a corner. So how do we want to do this? So we start with the top left corner is how this is ordered. So the ordering, I think I have to write a case for each one. It doesn't map easily. So we'll just handle like the top left corner first. So top left corner. And we'll say if boy. So you have 3 cases for each corner. You have, actually, I also care about, I don't just care about that. This is tricky. Here's how I'm going to do neighbors instead. I'm going to map them by offset. This is the easier way. And instead of doing N8, I'm going to do, well, N4, I'm going to do N8 because I want the corner information too. The corner information is going to be very important here. So, and what I'll do is, instead of doing that, we'll index in with the XY. No, wait, with the offset. And that's going to be a tuple. I'm not sure if that is a tuple. That should be a tuple. Equals true. I just have to see if it's in there. So actually, this could be a set. It doesn't really matter. Just do set, and then you can, and then it's just dot add offset. Anyways, so yeah, there's a couple cases. So the first case to test for is if it is an actual corner. So if, and then we do -1 0 in neighbors, and then we do the same thing except for the tile above. We want to see if that one's in the neighbors. Then we have a top left corner tile. So say tile images equals that, and we'll just append them as we go. So tile images.append. Actually, no, hang on, I'm gonna none them all out. Actually, oh, here's the funny way you can do this. None times 4. And instead of appending, I'm gonna index them directly because some of them are gonna be left to none. So that one will be equal to this, and then based on my thing here, our variant is gonna be, is that a tuple? I'm assuming that's a tuple. I think I did this so that it maps like X, Y kind of. So either way, it's 0, 0. I think that's how that works. We might have to change that later. And now, otherwise, so there's a couple more cases here. So we don't want to do anything if, let's say, I'm going to draw on top of this with white. Let's say you've got a tile here, and you're checking this tile. So you're checking the red, but you've got a tile above you. You actually don't want to, if you have that, so one up to your right and one right above, on the top right corner, you want to actually use, funny enough, this one that I'm drawing on. But then on the top left corner, you actually don't want to have this one, because if there's an empty spot to the top left, then that means we need to cut off the shadow. So we just leave it with this one, and then we don't render this one. So we need to check the corner, the actual corner associated with whatever corner I'm checking, to see if what I should use. I should not have closed that. I need that image back. That's my reference. But yeah, so we gotta check that corner to see if I need to render or use that full length thing. Anyways, so if we're in the top left corner, we have two options. So these are the options. So you use that one, use this one, or that one, or none. Those are your options. So to use these, I would have to look at the neighbors. So let's say there's one above. I need to check and make sure there's something in the top left corner for that one, and then for this one there's something on the left, and there also has to be something in the top left corner. So that's how that's going to work. Anyways, so let's check the top left corner here, or the above. So it's going to have to be, actually I could just copy this. So this has got, instead of that, we're going to do this, and that will give us the second one down. And now the last case is, instead of doing that, we switch that back to 0, and then this one becomes -1, -1, and then that will give us our other one. Or no, it's backwards. Yeah. So the left side one is the first one with the way I ordered my stuff. Anyway, so now we do this for the other corners. You could write an algorithm that will handle the mapping of the corners to other stuff, but that would be a bit of a pain, so I'm not going to bother. It's actually easier to just read the slightly longer spaghetti. So top right corner. And so the top right corner will be tile images 1. And instead of having -1 on the X, we're going to have 1 on the X. And I think that actually does it. Well, this has to move on across too. But so you've got right and up, that's correct. And then this is the corner, the top right corner, and then the top is going to give you a flat top. Is that correct? Wait, so you have top right and above. Wait, hang on. Did I do this stuff right? Okay, yeah. So you got top right and above. So these need to be flipped to back, because this one's the right wall. The way I spun these was a bit weird, so I'm gonna have to mess with the numbers as I go there. And then, so the next one is going to be the bottom right. So that's 1, 1. So this one is going to be 2. And then just remove all those negatives. And that will give us the bottom right. Bottom right. And so our bottom right is going to be oh, you know what I can do? here's how I'll do this. Instead of indexing in right here, I'm actually just going to take the tuple because that describes it, and then I can use this to cache it as well because tuples are immutable. So I just convert the tile images list to a tuple, and then that gives us an immutable descriptor of the combined shadow tile. And then I can use that to cache stuff. And then I can call any on the list to determine if there is a tile there at all. Anyways, so all this needs to come from that row. All that needs to be that. All right, so let's reevaluate this again. We've got our top right tile. Wait, no, bottom right tile, and our bottom tile. So this one should be this one right here. So that should be 2. So it switches back again. So 2 and 1, because this one's going to be bordering on the right. All right. Now for the last corner, this is probably one of the more boring parts of the stream. We do bottom left. So for this one, it's going to be minus on the X, but then positive on the Y. All right, so we go third row here, and we reevaluate. We've got a corner, and then we've got corner and bottom is going to be the 1, so it just flips back again, and that makes sense with the way this is going. All right, so now we have tile images. If we convert that to a tuple, we can get the shadow ID equals the tuple of this. So that will describe our shadow here. And now we can do if any shadow ID, because if none of these cases were met, meaning it's an open tile with no shadows on it, then all of these will be none, and if you call any on that, you'll get no tile, or well, you'll get true if there is a shadow. So we need to do that first to make sure we make something we need, and then we also need a shadow cache. And this thing is not even specific to a specific map, so this is just global. Shadow cache equals that, so I don't actually have to make that a member variable. That can be like a constant almost up at the top, or just like a more global thing. I use all caps for things that aren't necessarily constant sometimes. I use all caps for anything that is outside of an object pretty much. Which I think is a violation of PEP 8, I would guess. Anyways, so shadow cache, shadow, or if shadow ID not in shadow cache is when we need to create the image. So our shadow image equals pygame.surface, and it's going to be based on a tile size, which I think I should have. Do I have it? Yeah, self.tile size. Self.tile size, self.tile size. And then now we just start filling this thing up. Well, shadow image.set color key, because it needs one. There we go. That way it can be transparent. And then shadow image dot, well, this is where we start blitting on our images. I'm just gonna hard code these. So blit, and we'll do, here's where I need to grab that variant thing again. So we'll give us our image. So we do that, and we replace self.type with shadows, and our variant will be tile images 0, and then we'll go up. So this one is a top left one, it goes there, and then we just have 4 of these. So it goes 1, 2, 3. And then, so the next one's going to be self.tilesize divided by 2. And then, so that's going to be the right, and then we have the bottom right and bottom left. So self.tilesize divided by 2. And then this is going to be both of them. Self.tilesize divided by 2, self.tilesize divided by 2. All right. Now, shadow image.set alpha. So this will control, well, this will make it so that it's not like a solid shadow. We'll just make it like 100. And then, shadow cache shadow ID equals shadow image. And then, so after that, we can do shadow image equals shadow cache shadow ID, because if this evaluates to false, that means it's already there and we don't have to generate it. And now we can create our tile. So we can do our shadow tile with self and shadow image, and then we need to pick our position, which will be based on X and Y. I believe it's just X and Y, right? I think that's how it works. We can look at some of the other tiles. That looks correct. And now I just have to dump it in to the shadow map thing. So self.shadows, and we'll do XY equals that, and that will give us our shadow, I think. So we have our self.shadows, yep. So now we just need to add it to the rendering. Where should I do this? Aha. So I have floors and walls. So after floors, let's do if xy in self.shadows, self.shadows xy.render, and then it'll be cam r.top left. So that's just telling it where the camera is so it can render it properly. I'm gonna be shocked if this works first try, but we will see. Nope. Okay. Mistake number 1, I forgot to index into the offset. That's easy. 0, 1. Mistake number 2, no self.parent. Oh, that makes sense, yeah. Because this is this is inside the tile map, not inside a tile, so I don't have to do self.parent to access that here. All right. And I accidentally closed the thing. Put that over there. Okay. Key error. None. Fun. I'm gonna have to figure out what happened there. So presumably my shadows are missing some stuff. I'm gonna take a quick look at the chat though. Is this like monogame? I have not tried monogame, so I don't know. What does E stand for in self.E? That's it means elements. So I have my own basically global access thing where I can access anything by name from pretty much anywhere. That's in game development, it's very different from most software stuff where, because since it's simulation, everything does interact with everything. And I found that the fastest way to code a lot of that stuff is to have just spaghetti connections going out everywhere. So everything accesses what it needs to use. And actually, even if you map out the connections, it's super confusing. If you think about it in terms of the object interactions from an object's perspective, you can find what you're looking for usually if you're wondering where an interaction is. So it's going to have to be on the object code for one of those two objects. So it's not too hard to find things, even though it kind of sounds like spaghetti. So it ends up working out pretty well. But normally people would say you shouldn't, that's a bad coding practice, but it works really well for game development. Sort of like from my understanding, yeah, I think monogame is kind of like a framework. What is it running on? Let's see. Monogame. What's it use? I know it's for C#. It's a framework. Does it use OpenGL. Does monogame use OpenGL? Oh, so monogame can use either OpenGL or DirectX. Interesting. I cannot use DirectX. I've not touched DirectX. You normally think that people's virtual characters are weird, but mine works pretty well. Are you talking about it's animated well or it matches my voice well? But yeah, so I wrote the like all of the animation stuff myself. It's running on MediaPipe to get my facial landmarks, and then doing all the math and stuff to compute all the modifications to the like the morphing of the face. Yeah, Python, if you want to get into game development like, for fun, Python can be a decent option. If you want to work in the industry, you're not going to really find a whole lot of, well, probably zero Python game development jobs. So it's purely for fun, or if you're like a solo game developer like me. But I've proven in competitions by winning them, like winning game jams and stuff, that I can outcompete people using game engines. So it's very viable. Yeah. What's Pygpen? It's my framework. Why do you see that? I don't. Where in here does it say Pygpen? Because I don't think I said it. But yes, it's my base framework. Oh, it's probably on the left, isn't it? Yeah, it's right here. It's my base framework for my 2D stuff generally. It's made more for platformers, but in this case, I modified it to make it work for a top-down game. The side effect was I had to hack together my own tile map thing. Pygpen has a built-in tile system, but I'm not using it for this because this is a top-down game, so it needs to work differently. What if you're in an object shadow? So that would not be applied to the player. It would just show under it. So flow to the left. Yep. Is the init.py file part of the game file? You don't see it in the scripts to the left. I don't have an init.py. I have some in Pygpen, but I don't need it here. So init.py is just what ends up getting run if you import a folder. So if you import just like a folder name, so if I do import Pygpen here, it'll import init.py. That's what it does. So that's what happens when you import a folder instead of directly importing a script. And that's what you use it for. But I don't need it in any of these things. Neighbors.append location in self.solids. Yeah, that would have been an option, but I switched to using a different system here. How much RAM does my PC have? I think is it 32 or 16? I've forgotten at this point. I think it's 32. Yeah, 32. Yep. 13700K, 32 gigs of RAM, 37 Ti. Yeah. How do I make a batch file and add your game.exe so Microsoft says your exe is errors always? Oh, that's not. I think I did that on some of my games, and I think I might do that more going forward. There are some game jam games where I was just too lazy to do it, but it is actually a good workaround. But yeah, you would just have to learn batch scripting, which is not too hard. So you can look it up. The idea is that you're just calling commands, so you just find the commands to run your game, and you run it. VS has an external init.py if it's in the game engine. I'm not sure what you're talking about. I'm trying to read the Spanish. There's a couple keywords I don't know in there. I see. I don't know what rendimiento means in a Pygame game. And then mejorar, I'm guessing, is going to be something along the lines of best or better, related to that. I don't know what the AR at the end means. And I'm guessing the patria is that just a conjugation of poder? I don't know. I think that I don't know what it says because I don't know what rendimiento means. Is it pure Pygame or is it modern GL? It will have modern GL added later. I have not added it yet. So right now this is pure Pygame. You want to change to Pygame, but you don't know where you can start. So if you know Python already, my platformer tutorial is a decent place to start. If you're really experienced programming, you can just go straight into the documentation pretty much and learn from there. But if you're like a complete beginner and haven't done any Python, mine's not the best. I can't remember. Clear Codes might have introduced Python a bit more than mine. Yeah, and someone mentioned exactly what I mentioned, which is my tutorial and then also Clear Codes. How do I make my pixel art and music? My pixel art, if you saw earlier, was MS Paint. I'll use Sprite if I need to animate. My music used to be LMMS, now it's FL Studio. FL Studio and Sprite are the only things I use that cost money. For a long time, I was making games without using anything that costed money. So no, LMMS is free, MS Paint is free, so all of it's free. But yeah, I just upgraded my tool set a bit, even though I still use MS Paint for most things. How often do I run into issues due to Python's flexible typing? You use C++ and Odin, and the thought of using, I'm assuming this thought, of using Python for big programs scares you a bit. Yeah, you're playing with fire a bit when you're doing that, but there's advantages to it. So there's the idea of type swapping, where you can switch the type of something. Like for example, right here, tile images. So I switched these nuns to images. Now, you sort of have that in C++, where if you make these pointers, you could have them be null pointers by default and then point to the images, which is effectively the same thing. Or then point to something else. So that's one way you can do it. But it's not just stuff like this. So you might like have a default value and you want to switch to something else. And there's all sorts of random type swapping stuff you can do that doesn't fit as well into typed languages, or more strongly typed languages. So I make, because I've always been using Python and that's what I started with, even though my job right now, like my job where I go into an office job, I do a lot of C++. I'm still more used to Python, and when I think about problems, I think about solutions disregarding types pretty much. And you can have a lot more stuff going on in less code when you don't have to worry about, like, when you can get away with things like type swapping, and also you don't have to write out the types for things, which saves you a bit of code as well. Now that does make it more difficult to, when you're going back and referencing something, figuring out what type something is. Like I can't just hover this thing and figure out what type it is. Well, VS Code will try, but it doesn't really know. Does this thing know? It says it's a constant. Yeah, it's sort of a constant because the dictionary is an object. So the object that it's pointing to is not changing. So it's constant in that sense, but the dictionary's contents will change, which is funny. Yeah. Yeah, so I fully take advantage of the way that Python's typing works, but it's something you have to learn to think with. And if that's not how you started learning to code and you're just stuck translating everything from, especially to me, it seems like you get more out of translating untyped, I guess, mental pseudocode into typed pseudocode than into typed languages, rather than doing it the other way around, where you're used to working in typed languages and you're trying to translate it into being untyped. Because when you do the reverse translation from types to, well, where the types aren't enforced really, you miss out on the optimizations that can come from not worrying about types. Whereas if you're going the other direction, where you're going from untyped to typed, then you're forced regardless to correct your code to meet the types, meet the requirements for typing everything. So in general, I think the code will be, I guess, if you think about it, the code written by someone who's more used to untyped stuff would be more dense on average between both options. I don't know, just kind of a random thought on it. But yeah, so bug-wise, I don't really run into a whole lot of bugs with the typing in Python. Occasionally something will come up, but I'll catch it pretty fast. A lot of it's stuff I'll catch like immediately, but stuff that hides in there that I catch later is pretty rare. And even if I do run into it, I can fix it pretty easily, so it's not a huge issue. Do I use shaders? I will later, not yet on this project. I'll add them in later. If I tried Raylib, yes, I tried it a long time ago. I think it's gotten better since I last tried it, because the Python implementation for it had some issues when I last tried it, but I don't have much of a reason to use it right now. NVIDIA or AMD for coding? Doesn't really matter too much. I think, well, historically, I think NVIDIA's had better support if you want to use your cores, or your GPU for code stuff. What is it? I'm trying to remember. There's all sorts of projects where you can, I think I know there's a project where you can like write Python, like in your Python file, and run it on the GPU or something. But it only worked for NVIDIA. And there's, I think, a few like for code-wise, there's a few features that are only on NVIDIA stuff. But if you're releasing anything publicly, you're probably going to want to support both anyways. So I mean, like in game development, you need to support both. So it doesn't really matter for game development. It's only like if you're doing like machine learning stuff, I guess, if you would want to use NVIDIA. Yeah. You can build ASP.NET from source for personal use, but you can't distribute it. Yep. Although then you have to rebuild it every single time there's an update, whereas I can just go grab the updates and not have to worry about rebuilding it. Because, like, I mean, I paid $10 years ago, and I don't have to worry about building it constantly every time there's an update. So Depending on how much you're making and stuff, the convenience can be worth it. Yeah, because even with game development, I think I make I make probably 20 to 30 bucks an hour on game development. Seems to be what it is. So less than an hour of that to never have to worry about building a sprite is a decent deal. Yeah, Libra Sprite's from before they changed the license. So it's actually a pretty old version of a sprite, if I remember correctly. You always use types in Python. That can be useful if you're like in a more organized environment. And there's things like, what is it, PyTest, where it can check and make sure all your types make sense. But if like, and that's also if you work on teams and stuff, that can be useful. But when I'm working by myself, it's an absolute waste of time. How long do I plan on streaming today? Well, I think once I fix these bugs I've got here, I should be done. So I'll probably go for another maybe 30 minutes. We'll see. It depends on how many bugs there are. It's all caps, that's why it says it's a constant, and also the color is different. Is that why it's assuming that? It could also just be because it's defined outside of a class, but yeah, it's probably because it's all caps. Because that's the PEP8 thing, is that should be a constant. It's funny that it uses the variable name to assume the type of a variable in Python. I mean, I guess I don't have a whole lot else to go off of. Also, something that's funny is when I use my element system, I completely lose all access to VS Code's ability to tell like what even this assets object is, which is another thing that's not great for if anyone else wants to touch my code. But since I have most of the stuff memorized, it works out fine. Doesn't Python use typing to some extent, or am I missing it? So I mean, there's types in the sense that you have your strings and your floats and your integers and stuff like that, and you can't do the string of ABC plus the number 1. So there's typing in that sense, but you don't have to type it. Type out your types in your code. I forgot the term. There's a term for it. I don't know why I keep forgetting it. Is the term strongly typed? It might be. It's funny, there's all sorts of technical terms in programming that I just haven't really bothered learning too much because I don't really have much of a need to know them. I guess you need to know them more when you're communicating with people like this. So like this is a circumstance where it's useful, and then also at work. When you're talking to people about code and stuff, it's useful to know that stuff. But when I was not live streaming my programming, like when I was programming and when I was only working with myself for like the first, 8 years, there was no benefit in me knowing those terms really. Because, I mean, I intuitively know the different concepts in the languages. I don't need to know a word for them. Yeah. Don't you need string and int to cast inputs? Well, yeah. So that's the same thing. It's like you'll get errors when you try to mix, try to do invalid operations based on types. So that's what that's for. But you don't. Not everything. Most things you don't have to specify types. It just comes from like you typed it in somewhere. So here's my 3. That's an integer. Some languages have things like that. C++ I think has auto. I think that's what that does. And then if you type like var in Kotlin, it'll just assume, and you can get your types that way. But I don't have to like specify the types of parameters and return types and stuff like that. So that's where that comes in really. CUDA. Python binding for Rail but still has issues. You've been struggling with it right now. You've even considered running Raillib in Zig or C and media pipe in Python to do IPC. I'm not sure what you're doing where you want Raillib and media pipe. Are you trying to do what I have with my avatar? Because that's close to what I did. I did modern GL and then I did media pipe with Python. Now, my original implementation, before I knew about media pipe, I was using a JavaScript thing to track my face, and I did inter-process communication. It wasn't even inter-process; it was outside. It was going to I think it was going over the loopback and like sending data to like a server essentially, and then going that way. And the very first version is communicating by writing and reading files, which is not great for your hard drive. Yeah, I'm not sure what you're using. We're trying to mix those for. It's I definitely wouldn't do I wouldn't do inter-process communication for like within a game where like maybe some of your rendering is on one side and some of it's on another side. That would be pretty janky. But if you're just forwarding media pipe data, that works pretty well. That's pretty much what I've got right now. I think the way my current thing works is it's just threading and it's shared memory. So I have a thread for the media pipe stuff and a thread for the Pygame stuff, and it's using the shared memory. You have a question. You're also building your own game engine, and you're wondering, did I make it like standalone and how? And somehow use it externally, or do you copy the files you need from it and add to those? So if you're doing it the clean way, and if you're like adding it to pip and stuff like that, you would want it to be standalone. But I actually drop it in, so I have my Pygpen folder right here. And the reason for that is so that I can just go in and modify things if I want to slightly change how some core feature works. So that flexibility is really useful. Why does my phone keep going off? Hang on. Silence phone. Yeah, so I like to have the flexibility of having the files right there for me to mess with if I need some minor change the original framework wasn't flexible enough for. Because what originally happened was I had a bunch of just scripts that I kept copying into projects that would reuse like functions and stuff from, and then I just merged it all together in one thing, and I called it a framework. But I still have random minor changes I might want to make for some like weird features or something, so it's just useful that way. Python's actually strongly typed. Oh wait, is that so strongly typed? Is that the type enforcement thing where you do string plus integer and it gets mad? But basically, you don't have to declare your variable types. I forgot what the term is for that. Or actually, I saw people arguing over that term a while ago. I'm not sure if people are entirely sure what it means. Like, just in the general programming community discourse. It's not strongly typed as you do not define the type of the variable. Well, that's what I was thinking when I said it at first. So I feel like there was a term referring to types that people were saying didn't mean what people thought it was, and it might have been strongly typed. Let's Google this. What is strongly typed? It just says typing rules. Oh, so okay. Here, I'm gonna pull this over. A weakly typed language has looser typing rules, so that's just super vague. It may produce unpredictable or even erroneous results, or may perform implicit type conversions at runtime. So the type conversions part, Python does not really do. Oh wait. is this image what I'm looking for? Oh yes, statically typed is the term, I think. So Python is dynamically typed, and then the strong versus weak typing. So we have in Python we have conversions between floats and ints, which makes it so that it's not super strongly typed. So it'll your integers will just randomly get converted to floats if you start mixing in some stuff. That happens to a degree in C as well. Inside statements, like if you do like times 1.0 and the other things like the number 5, it'll get converted to a float, but if you're storing it in an integer, it'll go back to an int. So it depends. Whereas in Python, since it's dynamically typed and you can do type swapping, it'll just keep that float as soon as it turns into a float. Now, I'm curious what a strongly typed dynamic language looks like. I've barely seen a little bit of Ruby. Obviously, I know Python. I know Perl. That's disgusting. PHP is also kind of gross. JavaScript's also gross. Not as bad as Perl, but yeah. Why is C++ weakly typed? Hang on. C and C++ are weaker typed than Python? This is just someone's Medium article, so it may not even be correct. C# is very strongly typed, apparently. Someone else made... Hang on, this is the same thing. Someone stole from someone here. Maybe. It looks like someone stole from someone here. That's funny. Oh, look, there's even more. There's like this one. Man. People have been copying out this diagram a lot and putting in like the exact same languages. Python is not strongly typed. So that Google search seems to indicate that Python is strongly typed, but dynamically typed. Is Pygame commercially viable for game dev? There are a couple of cases where the answer is yes. So my 2 games that I've already released averaged about over $30 an hour for the work I did on them. I think Switch Cars was financially successful. They probably made, I don't know, like 10 grand or something. I don't know how much that came out to an hour. There's also Rift Wizards. Rift Wizard. This is the most successful Pygame game. Almost 1,000 reviews. So if you do the math on that, that's like tens of thousands of dollars. I think, is it tens or hundreds? Let's see, 922 by 40 by, I think, was it a $10 game? Yeah, so he's probably looking at like over $100,000 with that one. So there are success stories, and actually a lot of them. You know what? The Pygame games on Steam may actually have a higher success rate than non-Pygame games. Now that I think about it, because there really aren't that many. If you exclude all the visual novels that are using RenPy. You want to render a rig 3D model and modify bones? Yeah, so you're doing what I'm doing, I guess. Mine is, well, I'm not doing bones. I do have, if you look at my, is it 2023 recap? I think it's 2023. I have something where I am using a properly rigged model with, you know, all your bone weights and everything on your vertices, and I have skeletal animation, and I hooked that up to MediaPipe, so I already did that already. But I don't have much of a use for it. It was more of a for fun thing. I also used it as a class project, but yeah. So, and I did that with MediaPipe and ModernGL. Now, learning how to do skeletal animation from scratch in modern GL can be a bit of a challenge. You need to know your linear algebra pretty well. How did I learn the AI/ML skills you have on my resume page? Let me see what exactly I said on that. Where did I say that? I said data science and AI/ML. So if you notice there, the actual things I listed there lean much more towards data science. The only AI/ML thing I listed was scikit-learn, and that one I used for a single class, like I took an AI class. But most of it's like just like data science stuff. So matplotlib, graphing stuff, Seaborn, more graphing stuff. It's just to make your matplotlib stuff look nice and easy to use for a lot of data science stuff. Pandas, that's just data organizational things. NumPy, lots of math stuff pretty much. And then scikit-learn is the AI part, which is the most basic AI stuff you can do. But yeah, I did that in a class. So I didn't really look into the online resources too much, but there's plenty of resources for scikit-learn if you want to figure that stuff out. JS allows you to add strings and numbers since it is weakly typed. Yep. C++ being statically weakly typed sounds whack. Yeah, I'm curious what the argument for it being weakly typed is. Because I feel like the amount of casting, like the unexpected casting and stuff that goes on during runtime is probably equivalent to Python. I mean, Python is using C under the hood. Although I don't think the types aren't one-to-one. They create their own objects and stuff, I think, for the Python types. I'm not sure yet why it's weakly typed. Probably because of pointers and stuff. I'm not sure how pointers makes it weakly typed. Maybe it's weakly typed because you can modify memory directly. I would not be surprised. How do I get the small map thing on the top right? I have a file for that, I think. Do I? Minimap.py. Oh, the machines thing generates it. It's up here, I think. Machines, destroy, create, activate, decay, render, machines, reset, new wave, play spawn. Where's the minimap? Where's the map? Give me map. Oh yeah, wait. So I think I create it when every frame pretty much. You just create another surface and put dots on it for enemies on walls and stuff. Weakly typed or duck type is bad for debugging programs if you're going to use languages that support weakly typed language. Are you not talking about dynamically typed there? Because what it sounds like we were talking about is the dynamically typed based on the things we're just talking about. If you're going to use languages that support weakly typed language for a big program, keep the scope of these variables small. So you're saying, I'm pretty sure you mean dynamically typed, but it's not a huge issue for debugging. Also, Pygame's tracebacks are really good, especially compared to segfaults in C++. So usually you can find your issues pretty fast, especially if you know your code base. So when I'm working by myself, I don't get stuck trying to figure that stuff out much. English or Spanish? Well, I mean, I'm speaking English. I can read a little bit of Spanish. I've been working on that. Railweb has support for skeletal animation, which is why you're using it, but the Python version doesn't work correctly for animation specifically. That's rough. Whereas the same code works fine in Zig. That's weird. Why does that port of Railib to Python have so many issues? Is it because there's just no one really trying to use it? Since there's other alternatives that are pretty solid for Python? I don't know. It seems like most people using Railib are using like C#, C++, that type of stuff. How did I learn all the math behind all my code? I mean, most of it I learned as I went. It's like 95% of it's arithmetic, and the remainder of it for a project like this is just trigonometry, which I have a video about. If you look at, it's got an orange thumbnail. It's like game development math or something. It's one of my older videos. I go over the basics of what you need. You just need sine, cosine, and arctangent to do most of the angle stuff in 2D. Now, if I do 3D stuff, so if you're looking at my avatar, that takes a lot of linear algebra and that gets a little more complicated. I don't think I ignored any questions. Actually, wait. Chocolate chip cookies. I don't see another message from you. Your last message that I see is you talking about the constant. Yeah, I don't see any questions from you. Is there a good source to learn OpenGL with Python? Actually, not really. That's one of the difficulties with getting into it. I might make a tutorial sometime, but the way I did it is I learned the OpenGL pipeline, and then once you know that, it's kind of easy to figure out. So the hard part is just learning how OpenGL works. So they're separate to a degree, although you interface with it through some sort of library. So with Python, it's like PyOpenGL, or in my case, I use ModernGL. But yeah, so with ModernGL, you really get the most out of it if you fully understand the OpenGL pipeline and you understand what's going on under the hood. If you don't, you're gonna be kind of confused, I feel like. But yeah, there's not a great resource. I mean, I used learnopengl.com, and that's not gonna be Python, but it's the same concepts. What IDE is this? VS Code, as you can see at the top left here. Did I try C# and monogame? No. I've tried C#, but not monogame. Railib feels like Pygame for C++. It can handle some stuff a bit better because it's using OpenGL. So it's actually, I think, closer to arcade, technically, than it is to Pygame. Yeah, so those niches are mostly filled. Now, the 3D portion of what Railib does is where there's not really a good option in for Python right now. But there's not a whole lot of people doing 3D stuff with Python anyways. And even doing 3D stuff in Railib, there's not very many people doing that to begin with, even in other languages. So it's fairly niche. Am I ever going to release my networking module for Python? I talk about that at the end of the video that I'm probably going to release today. And the answer is I will probably release it once it's been tested in the test project I'm working on, which is on hold until I finish Yawnoc and probably Pixcarts as well. So there's going to be a video about that, hopefully later today. But in the meantime, I'm working on Yawnoc and Pixcarts. So that's going to be held off for a bit. Now, in I think 15 days, Pigpen officially becomes open source, so you can go grab it out of like Moonrabbit collection or something and try using it. I think there's a license in there that specifically says that it's a funny license where it's I think basically MIT, except there's a clause that says that it's all rights reserved until like July 2024. So that one's going to be open source soon. Technically, you could use it anyways. Right now, it's just he couldn't legally release anything until July 2024. And that's for the that's not for ShopNet. That's for Pigpen. You asked about if I were a beginner in Pygame, would I use Pygame.Sprite? It might be because it's something with a dot in it. I think Pygame. Well, YouTube might be a bit wary of things that have dots in them because a lot of times that's like websites and URLs and stuff like that. The bots will try to put in stuff like that for scams. So, so yeah, I just don't use Pygame.Sprite. I've never used it, and I don't have a reason to use it. What languages, in my opinion, can be applied to other languages? What? I'm not sure what that question means. Did I use OpenGL with Pygame? I have, and to a degree I do with ModernGL. This project does not have ModernGL yet. Am I ever going to release code for a game? Which game? This one? When this game gets released, the source code will be bundled with it'll be in the Steam files, so you can go look at it. Also, the source code, I think, was also on my Patreon, so you can look at it there. Raylib feels more centered around 2D. When you start using it for 3D, you will start tinkering with the abstraction layer Raylib is based on, called RLGL. Interesting. Yeah. I remember, well, Godot used to be mostly 2D, and it started getting into 3D, and it's real. They're improving that area a lot right now. And I'm starting to add 3D to my games with Pygame and ModernGL. Does this run really well? This is 160 FPS right now. I can optimize it later. What languages are similar to others? I mean, it's a very broad question. I mean, there's kind of variants of different. I mean, to a degree, C and C++ are very similar. Like C code is valid C++ code a lot of the times, but C++ has the object-oriented features and stuff like that, so they're different, and it's a very subjective topic. That like Python and Lua could be seen as pretty close. Python and GDScript are very close. All right, so let's finish this debugging here. I need to figure out what it even thinks is in here. Print that out. And what is it? So we've got our tuples here, which is what we expect. So the real question is, what happened over here that made it not valid? So here's where I'll just go print, and we'll take our tile images, and then we'll see what part of this it didn't like. Oh, it didn't like the none, right? I forgot to write the none case for this. So if tile image is 0, if tile image is 1, that's not what I meant to do. If tile image is 2, if tile image is 3, there we go. And I do see the shadows. So now let's remove the old ones. So to remove the old ones is pretty simple. We just go, where is this? Maps? Where did I put this? maps. So just go here and remove all the dark red stuff and replace it with just red. So those are the shadows. Those can go bye-bye. Bye-bye. Now I could also render the shadows on top of the grass too if I wanted. I think I just got to figure out what the Z level of the grass is if I want to do that. So remove all the shadows. Missed. And almost there. There we go. Shadows have been removed. So I do see a couple issues here. Do I? Wait. Ugh. Yeah, I see a couple things. So top right there doesn't look right. Oh, yep. I see what I did here. So these should actually all be 0, 0. Oops. And now that I think about it, you also can't see anything, any of the shadows that are gonna be facing the top side of something, I don't think so. Some of these shadows are unnecessary. There we go. There are the shadows. And that's what I meant to see. So now everything has shadows, and I could actually put the grass into it too. Now I have to be very careful because I don't want the player mixed in. So what is the grass Z? That is the question. So grass? Where's the Z on that? Self.gm dot update render. And we throw in a Z in here, I assume. Z equals -5. Really? So that makes it negative, we can do -4.9, I guess. Where is my stuff? So -4.9 here, I guess? Will that do it? Ah! Wrong one. Made all the grass disappear. There we go. So now, look at that. So the shadow goes over the grass now. Yeah, so shadow's looking good. And that is really important so that you can just tell where's a wall and where's not a wall. Yeah, the game I think looks a lot better with the shadows there, with the proper shadows. Now I'm curious about the frame rate as well. Let's see if I can check that. So we were at 160 before. Print self.e window.fps. Yeah, 160. So it basically didn't affect FPS. That's great. Yep. So we have shadows. Now, actually, I want to make the shadows a bit darker, I think. Where was that one? It's going to be 130. I think that's the right level for the shadows. Looks good. All right. You followed the Ninja Game tutorial and you're trying to add a larger enemy. How exactly does the solid check function work for, yeah. Read the pinned comment on that tutorial. There's notes on how to do that. You expand the lookup table. You don't add the position, the size to the position. I don't think. Well, technically it happens when you do your rect stuff, but you should be just changing your rect, not. You shouldn't have to add a plus 23 anywhere. You can't decide on whether to stick on Python or C++. What do you think? What should you think about when deciding between the two? I mean, you're gonna get more stuff done faster with Python, probably if you're doing things from scratch. You'll get to spend more time problem solving, but in the short term, if you're looking at getting a job, you're much more likely to get a job if you're using C++ because, well, first of all, if you actually want to be in game development, there are C++ game development jobs. There are not Python game development jobs. So the experience for jobs is not great. Although the problem-solving experience you get from doing game development in Python, I think, is probably one of the best things you can do to improve as a software engineer. But it just doesn't look too great on a resume. So that's one of the biggest downsides. And then also there is the advantage of, if you haven't learned it yet, to learn how memory management stuff works with C++. But I think in the long run, you can get more done faster in terms of how long it takes to write your code, not how long it takes for your code to execute. You can get more done faster by using something like Python. There could be some variation in tree shapes to make it more interesting. Yeah, I would do that at some point. I haven't bothered with it yet because it's not a priority yet. The next thing I'm going to add, like environment-wise, is probably going to be water. I'm going to need shaders for that. I'm using sprite stacking for the trees. Kind of, technically. It's multiple layers. I split it up by color, so I make a layer for each color, and then I render them on top of each other and move them around, so that way it looks like the leaves are moving. So it works specifically for the way I draw the trees, so that it ends up looking good. So depending on how you draw your trees, that may or may not work for you. It's not actually 3D, and it's not trying to fake 3D like sprite stacking does. I mean, I guess it sort of is, because but the layers are moved around randomly, rather than being offset by a fixed amount where you spin it to get the 3D effect. So it's using some of the same ideas, but it's not really the same thing. Do I use ChatGPT at all? Not really. You should only have to offset stuff if your image size is different from the hitbox you want. Otherwise, all that information should go into your rect, and then your physics should be accurate. Is it possible to have an inventory system for a sprite like, say, Skyrim? How difficult would it be to have a complete set of animations, etc.? Could you somehow batch build the sprite? I'm not sure what the sprite part has to do with any of that. An inventory doesn't have to be associated with one specific sprite. Now, if you're saying you want an individual player to have an inventory that's separate from other players or something like that, or like enemies and stuff like that, I mean, yeah, that's possible. There's nothing about Pygame that stops you from doing stuff like that. I'm not entirely sure what it is you're asking to do, though. You mean like wearing equipment where you can build animations for each version of the gear without drawing in an entirely new sprite? Oh. So the way that works in 3D games, actually, I think may be easier in some sense than 2D ones, because in 2D ones you've got your hand animations, whereas in 3D ones you've got your skeletal animations, and you just weight paint your clothing, like your armor and stuff properly, stick it on your model, and you're good to go. So, and you can swap them out, and any animation you make should work for them. Now, so 3D stuff handles that pretty well, whereas 2D stuff, there is such a thing as like skeletal animation for 2D, but that's a specific kind of art style, essentially. Most 2D stuff is like hand-drawn animations, so you end up having to animate every single piece of clothing separately, which is why you don't see that type of thing as much in 2D games. Now there's ways you can kind of find a middle ground solution where you don't have to do a ton of artwork, but yeah, if you're talking about from a code perspective, can you, or what so you're talking about building the animation specifically. So if you look at Of Murder and Moonshine, which is that game I was contracted to make, I have a system where the NPCs are made up of multiple animations, like one for their body and one for their head, and you can mix and match them to create different NPCs. So you can do stuff like that, but you still do have to animate each one, like each piece of clothing, for example, by hand. Now, if you want your clothing to be kind of rigid, like, or for example, if it's something like a hat, where a hat doesn't deform or something as you move around, it may go up and down a little bit, but it doesn't deform, you can handle that all in code, and you don't have to do a ton of artwork for that. And that's why actually for that multiplayer game I was working on, actually you'll see that later today, my plan is for the equipment to be like belts and hats, specifically so I don't have to worry about the animation stuff, and I can just swap them out for the model. How does the grenade work? Does it just move towards the nearest enemy? No, it goes to wherever I right click, like wherever my cursor is. Do I have a tutorial on tiled? No, I don't use tiled. I tried it for like 5 minutes, like 5 years ago. I haven't touched it since. Why don't I make a game engine with Python? I basically did. That's what Pygame is, sort of. How do I feel about LeetCode? I don't really do it. I think there is like interesting problem solving stuff there, but I mean, it's mostly just data structures and algorithms is the idea. That's what the questions revolve around. I prefer to solve real problems. If you want challenging problems, there are some challenging problems there, especially when you get into like the dynamic programming stuff. But it's usually just finding some random trick. It's not super practical. I'm decent at LeetCode. I can do, I think most of the hards. I've only done like a few though. Like I've only properly solved a couple things on LeetCode and then I got bored. You're a software developer, no C++ and Java, and you need to start game development. Can I suggest a good video tutorial? No, I can't, because I've not looked into that side of tutorials at all. Got documentation for an open source character controller like mine, top-down acceleration, dashing, etc. for melee character thing. When you're making games the way I do, you code all of that stuff yourself. You're not character controllers are such a basic concept that and usually specific to a game that you would implement it yourself. So yeah. Now if you have a higher level framework, so like what I have with Pygame, I do have like an entity class with physics and stuff like that, but I don't have like rolling in there. So that's like a game specific thing, and the way you want to render that is up to you. So like rolling is just an increased, like you give it some velocity in a direction that fades off over time, and then you just change the image, which will depend on the game. And by change, I mean like shrink it and spin it, and then you handle your projectile logic so that if the player is rolling, then they can't be hit. So there's a lot of game specific stuff there. Did I have to learn music theory for my music? Uh, I learned a fair bit because I took piano lessons for I think 8 years when I was much younger. Like I started when I was like 5 or something. Um, so I took piano lessons for a while, and then I did learn some music theory there, and then more recently, because I stopped when I was like 13 or 14, I guess. Um, I got in. Well, when I got into making my own music more, I started looking into music theory myself. So, music theory just kind of tells you how to place your notes and whatnot, so that it doesn't sound bad. I still am not great. My sense of where to put the notes is not great, but having a rule set that you can follow to know roughly what would sound decent is useful. Um, so yeah, I have learned a bit of music theory there. It's not too complicated. The basics aren't too complicated. Just like the idea of, I don't know, chords, chord progressions, sticking to the scale, and well, the biggest thing is scales, and just sticking to a scale for the most part, unless you want something to be dissonant. And that someone can learn in a day easily. But am I going to release Pygame? It's already in the code for some of my games, and you can pull it out in the license. I believe says, like I mentioned before, you can use it starting in July of this year. Why Wi-Fi not Ethernet? Huh? Oh, because I don't have anything to plug in with. If you're making a game in Pygame but you have trouble making particles as your way of creating them is very slow, your game runs at 5 FPS, do you have any advice to make them render faster? It's hard to say. There could be a lot of things you're doing wrong. As a reference, you should be able to handle, I think, several hundred or possibly even over 1,000 at over 60 FPS, depending on some conditions. But I mean, you can follow. I have my tutorial articles if you want a reference. You can look at that. What do I think about Pyglet? Last I checked, it wasn't. I don't know if it's maintained now, but in the past, it wasn't really maintained. There's much more of a community around Pygame. But yeah, so I really haven't used Pyglet much. I tried it once, like 8 years ago, maybe. How many months will it take for I'm assuming to become a game developer like me? Well, I've been at this for like 10 years, so I don't know, over 100. Although I had the way that you benefit from starting early is a bit weird. So for example, I started when I was 12, so if you start early, I feel like the ceiling is higher for how good you can get, because you get the thought process kind of built into your brain as your brain is developing, so you get that advantage. But your overall ability to understand complex topics is going to be worse when you start younger. So for that reason, it took longer to get to where I am, but there are aspects of what I can do right now that if someone started when they were like 20, I would probably be a lot better at than like when that person gets 30 compared to starting at like 12 to where I am now. So there's a bit of a trade-off there. So you could get to this level in less than 10 years for most people, I think, if you focus on it. Also, there's the aspect that I on average only do, up until this year, I would say, most days I would code for less than an hour. So the time investment goes a long way as well if you can put in a lot of time. Do I think you should become a masochist and try to make a 3D MMORPG in Pygame? Video on that later today. If I don't know your name, like if I don't recognize you, there's a decent chance you probably shouldn't. Because if you had enough experience with like Python and Pygame to be at the point where you would be able to do something like that, like, and not have to go back and rewrite stuff a bunch of times because you didn't have, I guess, the experience to know how things should be written for certain things with like netcode or 3D stuff, then well, yeah, I forgot what I was saying, but yeah, so I think most of the people that would be at that level, I probably know about. Of course, there are some people that just aren't putting themselves out there, so I might not know about them. So that could be you. It would be a fun learning experience, though, but I wouldn't do it expecting it to be like a commercial project if you don't have a ton of experience. What was the number I gave for my physics particle thing? So I think the numbers I was saying for particles was for physics particles. Let's see where I put that thing. So my tutorial, it was the lighting one. Generation part. Okay, so I did 3,000 plus physics particles, and I think at over 60 FPS is what that one tutorial is. But then I also have a non-physics particles video, which is which can probably handle even more. How did I make my game title myself, or is that just fun? I drew that. How can we implement responsive and dynamic animations that change based on the game state and environment? You call a function to change the animation based on the game state and environment. Now, if you're talking about like the rain world type stuff, that gets more complicated. There's a lot more math than that. Does a dungeon crawler roguelite sound like a good idea to make something like that? It's a good learning experience. Now that genre is fairly saturated, and technically that's kind of the genre Yawnoc is in. So it can be hard to do well with that genre, but it's also a fun one to work in. The reason why there's so many of them is because as a game developer, you like the games more that have more replayability, or oftentimes you'll enjoy making them more if they have more replayability, which is nice. And dungeon crawler roguelikes have a lot of replayability. When you're young, memory management was rough in C. Yeah, I remember when I was 12, I tried to learn C++. So I learned something very interesting about, well, just reflecting on that, I've learned something very interesting about tutorials. Tutorials don't tell you, like I was looking multiple places and I could not figure out when I was 12. So first, there were less resources because this was 2013. But also the tutorials weren't as good. But the tutorials did not tell you what the curly braces were for and where they went. And that confused me a lot when I was 12. Now, yeah, everything just called it a code block and didn't really describe what that meant. Saying there, this is a code block and use the curly braces, and it was like, what's a code block? And they don't say. Back then, at least, you would have had to have figured that out from pattern recognition, or maybe had been lucky enough to find a good enough tutorial. There are definitely difficulties I had with C++ back then. But by the time I got back to it, and I don't know, probably when I was like 15, and I tried C++ again, I was far enough along that the memory management stuff wasn't too hard to understand. This is... Oh, wait. I'm trying to read the Spanish again. Is this I'm guessing, is this live? I don't know what Estará means. I'm guessing, from what I can tell, I don't know what that middle one means. I'm guessing it's a conjugation of to be, but I'm assuming you're asking if it's live, and the answer is yes, this is live. Hang on, I'm gonna see if I got that translation correct. Oh, okay. So is that the future tense? I have not learned the future tense. Well, the future tense is when you use like, well, there's the going to, but there's, I guess, other stuff in the future tense, the other way you phrase it. Interesting. So you're asking if there's going to be a video later, and I guess there is. All my live streams are stored as videos on the live tab. Since I said I can solve LeetCode problems, does this concept help in game development? No. Rarely. There's nothing I've learned from doing the LeetCode problems that would help in game development. It's more like, I don't know. It's just general, I guess, data structures and algorithms, problem solving kind of. So it's not a good way to learn game development, I wouldn't say. Game development has a lot of interesting problems that will actually apply to a lot of other areas. And I do think it's a really good way to learn programming. Much more so than LeetCode. You're making a physics simulator game related to rocket construction and operation. Any tips? Physics is the one part of game development, especially in 3D, that I avoid because it can be a pain. There's a reason why people make physics engines that you just plug into other things, and there's a reason why Godot does not have an in-house, or maybe they do, but I think they use Bullet. Game physics is probably one of the most difficult things to implement. Now, it is, I guess, something where there's probably resources out there so that you can just kind of copy most of what's out there, but if you're trying to just figure it out from scratch, it's very difficult. And then if you're doing exactly what's in a tutorial out there, then you might as well just use a pre-existing engine. And also there's the issue that the physics engines need to run really fast, and you shouldn't be coding them in Python probably. If it's 3D. Now, if it's 2D, which is what I have right here, I can get away with it. For the project, the actual gameplay doesn't matter, but since you're a game addict, you love making games and you enjoy playing, the focus for the project is on the level of complexity, like databases. I have not, for any of my games, added a database. All my save files are JSON files. Why I don't make a subfolder in my scripts folder? I was rushing. That's why. Because this was made for that competition. There's a video for it. And yeah, I was rushing. I didn't feel like organizing that stuff. I might organize it later. Not too much of an issue right now. And for reference, most of the code is in one file for both of the Steam games that I've already released. So, in fact, there's oftentimes an inverse relationship between how good your code is and your likelihood of releasing your game. Can you run the game you want to see it? If you look at the beginning of the stream, I played it for a bit. I guess a robot could involve a lot of procedural generation, which is an interesting topic in itself. You saw a few people generating dungeon layouts from grass, for example. Yeah, it's a fun thing to mess with, and then also the procedural generation gives you as a developer more things to, like, it's different every time for you, which is great and fun. Yeah. Are you making it in 2D, the rocket thing? Yeah, that's a lot easier. Yeah, that's perfectly fine then. I don't have any specific tips. I don't really mess with physics type games too much. Making projects in general is a better way to learn programming than lead code. Yep. But I think specifically game development is one of the best types of projects because you run into the broadest set of problems, I guess. It depends on the types of games you're making. So like if you're trying to code a visual novel, you're not going to learn a whole lot. But like a game like Yawnoc, you're probably going to learn a fair bit. Now, game engines kind of step in and replace a lot of the more interesting problems so that you don't have to solve them. So if you're learning with a game engine, you're probably not going to learn as much as if you do it from scratch. But yeah. And the thing is that if you do game development from scratch, especially if you're doing 3D stuff, you are forced to use a fair bit of data structures just to manage all of your data for the game. So those data structures and algorithms topics, at least many of the important stuff gets covered when you're trying to make a game engine. And you just kind of learn it as you need it. How many languages did I use for this game? Python and Python and Python. JSON files are what you normally use for your games too, but for the complexity of the project, you're being forced to use databases and pathfinding. I think, yeah, well, SQLite is what people use for some things if you want to get in specific fields, which can be useful. I think a lot of the things I do are kind of deterministic I don't have like big open worlds, and that's, I guess, if you have a big open world and you can mess with the world, kind of like Minecraft, that's when some more advanced database system is useful. But like for even Yawnoc, when I get really into progression and stuff, I can still just throw everything into one JSON file pretty easily. How does my Pygame work? Am I using the library for the GPU? I will later. Like I said before, I'm going to use ModernGL in this. I'm going to animate some water with ModernGL and do some shader stuff. But for now, this is all 100% Pygame. Looking into Arsina. I heard about that and I thought about looking into it, but then I got into ModernGL before I bothered getting into it. So I prefer ModernGL more. And that's going to be, ModernGL is much more lower level. In game development, what kind of knowledge should you know? Like in problem solving, we need DSA. That's not, no, you don't, DSA and problem solving are very different. DSA is in school, they use DSA as a method to learn problem solving. They are not tied in any way, really. Problem solving is a skill set that can be entirely separate from programming, and I think if you learn problem solving properly, you can actually jump into programming and hit the ground running pretty much, even if you haven't been programming before. So like an electrical engineer can figure out programming pretty fast. So problem solving is his own skill. That's the core skill of programming. But DSA is just a tool that you use to solve certain types of problems that most people don't even run into in their jobs. And then for game development, I think the equivalent of DSA, so like if you think of DSA and, well, funny enough, DSA has more application in game development than most of the things people have jobs in software. But another area that I guess you would have to learn in game development is your rendering pipeline. That's something that's useful to understand, I guess. But anyways, so I have been streaming for about 2.5 hours. I got my shadows working, so I think I'm going to end the stream here. I'll probably see you guys next week. Wait. I'm not entirely sure about that. We'll have to see. But I might have to, I'll switch back and forth between Yawnoc and PixCarts probably in my streams. Yeah. Anyways, thanks for coming.